I had folded the silk handkerchief 3 times precisely, then slipped it into the corner of the gift box beneath the custom frame. It was one of Ethan's favorite poems when he was a teenager. Something he used to recite in the car with me on the way to school. All rhythm and defiance. Invictus. Still bold after all these years. The frame was cherry wood, solid, like the promises I thought we still shared. I can't wait for tomorrow, I said, smoothing the last wrinkle in the tissue paper. I turned to Brittany with a smile. Her face changed first. It crumpled at the edges. Then her fingers twitched, and the glass of apple juice she was holding slipped from her hands and shattered across the hardwood floor. I froze. She did too. "I'm sorry, Grandma," she whispered. Her voice trembled like the juice-soaked shards on the floor. "But the wedding is tomorrow," I said, blinking. "No, sweetheart. I have the invitation right here." I forced a laugh, trying to keep the room from tilting. Brittany bit her lip. Mom said not to say anything. But we already went last Saturday. We dressed up, and Daddy wore his shiny blue tie. My legs gave out faster than I expected. I found the nearest chair and sat down hard. Then I reached across the table, pulled open the side drawer, and took out the thick envelope I'd been saving. There it was. Saturday, May 20th. Tomorrow, black ink, cream paper. My name written in that elegant faux calligraphy Vanessa always used for her party invites. But Brittany was telling the truth. That child's eyes had never lied to me. My hand clutched the envelope so tightly it wrinkled. Along the crease, the silence in the kitchen pressed, close as glass crunched under my slipper. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just sat still, one hand on the gift box, the other on the table. Somewhere deep inside, something shifted, like an old floorboard creaking under new weight. I drove to Carol's house with the envelope clenched in my hand the whole way. The address printed on the back flap felt like a slap. Now, Ethan's home. Not mine. When Carol opened the door, her silver hair was falling loose from its bun, her reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain. She saw my face and stepped aside without a word. Over tea, she unfolded the invitation slowly, as if it might crumble if handled too fast. She studied the print, the weight of the paper, the embossing. "This is professionally done," she said quietly. "Real print shop, real stationery." But if there were 2 versions, that's harder to prove, especially if the mailing list was split. My hand stayed wrapped around my mug. "So they planned it." Carol didn't answer immediately. She tapped the corner of the invitation against the table. Someone did. We sat in silence for a moment, the kettle ticking as it cooled. I thought back to Ethan's recent award, the one Vanessa turned into a series of wellness reels. This is what generational success looks like. She'd captioned one standing beside Ethan, both dressed in coordinated linen. My name never came up. "I used to be at every school play," I said softly, more to the mug than to Carol. "Now I'm not even in the family video recaps." Carol reached across the table and squeezed my hand once. Firm, not soft. Back home, I tried calling Ethan straight to voicemail. I sent a text, then another. Finally, I used the landline and dialed again. Nothing. I opened my laptop and typed in the wedding hashtag, Marest Moments, the one Vanessa once bragged about. There it was. Dozens of photos, brunch under silk canopies, guests tossing petals, Vanessa glowing in her sleeveless lace gown, her parents flanking Ethan as he gave a toast. The captions gushed. The smiles looked permanent. I kept scrolling. I wasn't there. Not in the background. Not even blurred. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd removed me. Ethan was 5 when David's car veered off the interstate during a late spring storm. I still remember the officer's pause before he spoke. Ethan clutched my skirt the whole time, silent, sensing what I couldn't yet process. That summer, I gave up the New York Fellowship. I returned the acceptance letter and boxed up my watercolor brushes. We stayed in Portland, Oregon. Instead, I picked up evening shifts at the floral distributor and weekend work at the library. Vacations became extra paychecks. Shoes lasted 2 winters. My car never had both air conditioning and a working radio at the same time. But Ethan always had school supplies. Soccer cleats, braces when he needed them. When he turned 28, I used what was left of my savings, most of it hidden under the name Sterling Family Trust, to help him buy his first fixer-upper. I signed as co-owner, but he handled the renovations, and Vanessa filmed the whole thing like a home improvement pilot. Later, When Brittany was born and the hospital bills outpaced their insurance, I quietly dipped into my CD account. He said, "Thanks, Mom. The next week over lunch." He handed me the check, letting me pay. That was always the way of it. Small gratitude, no memory. Last Thanksgiving, Vanessa hosted at their forever home. I arrived with a pecan pie and a pair of hand-knitted booties for Brittany's doll. The living room glowed with candlelight. The champagne flowed. Her parents sat at the head table, giving a speech about family legacy. I was seated at the folding table near the playroom, between a sleepy toddler and someone's nanny. I told myself it was just how the seating worked out. Too many guests. No one meant anything by it. But now I replay that moment with new eyes. The trust, the house, the payments, the help. If I helped build everything they stand on, what do I still own? The gravel under my tires crackled louder than expected as I pulled into their drive. Their front porch still had the monogrammed mat I'd gifted them last Christmas. Now stained with mud and worn at the corners, Vanessa opened the door with one brow raised, her mouth frozen in a tight line. "Beatrice," she said. Not quite a greeting. "I just want to talk," I answered, stepping inside before she could decide otherwise. The foyer smelled of citrus cleaner and vanilla candles. Ethan appeared from the hallway, shirt untucked, tie askew. His face flushed when he saw me. "Mom, I didn't wait for excuses. You sent me the wrong invitation." He rubbed his neck. "We didn't mean to hurt you. It was just easier. Less stress, you know? No tension at the wedding." Vanessa folded her arms. "You bring up things that make people uncomfortable. Old stuff. Family history no one needs dragged out again." I met her eyes and kept my voice calm. "I paid 3 years of your mortgage." "That old stuff paid for your honeymoon," she scoffed. "No one made you do that. You offered. You always offer, then act like we owe you for it." "I never asked for anything back," I said. "Not once." Ethan stayed quiet. His gaze flicked toward the stairs like he wished he could climb out of this. Vanessa smirked. "Exactly. So why the surprise now? You gave, we built. That's how it works." I stood still for a moment, letting the silence settle. Then I nodded once. Calm. My hand tightened slightly on my purse strap. "You're right," I said. "That is how it worked." Neither of them moved as I stepped back. Through the door. The air outside felt cleaner than the air inside. My car door creaked when I opened it. I sat. For a moment before starting the engine, heart quiet, not heavy. On the drive home, a thought slid in beside me. Soft but sharp. What else have I signed that they've conveniently forgotten? The lock on the bottom drawer hadn't clicked in years, but my fingers remembered the rhythm. Left, right, center. I opened it slowly, the wood creaking like an old breath. Inside, wrapped in plastic and layered between insurance forms and tax statements, sat the Sterling Trust file. I laid it flat on the table and opened to the first page. My signature stared back at me. Dated 7 years ago, Ethan hadn't qualified for the full loan back then. Too much debt. Not enough history. Vanessa was still trying to launch her wellness brand. He'd called me that spring. Voice low with worry. "If you co-sign, we can close by June," he said. But I hadn't co-signed. I'd bought the land outright. The trust had been my solution. A revocable living trust. Structured quietly. I let them pick the builder. The granite counters, the finishes. But the legal foundation, that was mine. I named myself majority holder. 80%. Ethan and Vanessa had access, yes, but not full rights. Not ownership. I picked up the phone and called Carol again. She answered on the second ring. "Do I still own it?" I asked without greeting. She didn't hesitate. "You do. You're listed as primary trustee and majority owner." "They just live there, Beatrice." I exhaled slowly. "Steady?" "Well then," I said, walking to the kitchen. I placed the kettle on the stove and pulled down the loose leaf tin. It's time they remembered who gave them the roof. As the water began to warm, I set the trust file beside my tea tray. Not to threaten, not yet, but to prepare. My hand hovered over the folder for a moment before resting gently atop it. All these years, I'd thought gratitude might eventually bloom. That being generous was enough to earn respect, but people forget. What's given too freely, they only remember what they're made to earn. And it was time they remembered. The county recorder's office was quieter than I remembered. A young man at the desk helped me print the most recent copies of the Sterling Trust documents. I showed him my ID, then slid the notarized amendment across the counter. He raised an eyebrow when he saw the updated clauses. "Freezing access?" he asked, just to confirm. "Yes," I said, my voice calm, steady. "Effective immediately. I revoked shared payment privileges, removed Ethan's access to the property maintenance card, and closed the sub-account tied to utilities. The paperwork went through in less than an hour. I didn't call. I didn't explain. On the drive home, I passed the old walking trail near the lake. I hadn't set foot there in years, not since the Sundays when Ethan was in high school, and I needed silence to think. I parked and stepped out. That night, I canceled the family's streaming subscription and removed the card on file for their mobile plan. The next morning, my phone lit up. Vanessa's message arrived in all caps. "Why are the cards declined?" Then another. "The property tax draft bounced. What's going on?" I let them sit unread. That evening, Ethan's email came through. Simple subject line. Mistake. "Mom, I think something's wrong with the account. Let me know if this was intentional or if we need to call the bank." I stared at the blinking cursor, then closed the laptop. The following day, I walked the lake path again. The air smelled of pine and cool moss. Ducks glided near the reeds, unbothered by wind or time. Later that week, I visited my estate planner. I removed the lake house from joint inheritance and transferred it solely to myself. No contingencies, no automatic succession. I folded the final document and placed it in the drawer beside my reading chair. I hadn't spoken a single word to them since I'd left their house, but somehow, they were starting to hear me anyway. The first post was vague. Vanessa wrote, "Nothing hurts more than being betrayed by someone who's supposed to love you." The photo showed her sipping tea, chin tilted defiantly. I wouldn't have noticed it if Carol hadn't sent me a screenshot the next morning. "She's talking about you," she wrote beneath the image. Soon came another post. "There's a special place in the world for people who twist kindness into control." The hashtags grew harsher. Number toxic family, healing journey. The comments started small. Then one follower asked plainly, "Why wasn't Ethan's mom at the wedding?" I didn't reply, but others did. 2 days later, a florist truck pulled up to my porch, a bouquet of white tulips and irises wrapped in soft green. The card inside read, "You deserved better." No signature. Then came a message from someone I didn't expect. "Nadia, Ethan's coworker, whom I'd met once at a fundraiser. Just wanted you to know," she wrote. "People are talking. His boss found out. They're reassigning the Maddox project. Not a good look." An hour later, I received another whisper from a different direction. A friend of Vanessa, someone I'd met only twice, forwarded me a screenshot from a group chat. One bubble read, "They forged a fake invite." That's cold. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The next morning, Vanessa posted a quote about removing negativity from your life. Her follower count dropped by nearly 2,000. One of her brand partnerships quietly disappeared from her profile. No announcement. Just gone. That same afternoon, I heard a knock at the door. It was Brittany, holding a small overnight bag, her hair in braids. She looked up at me and said, "Daddy said I could stay with you for the weekend. Is that okay?" My heart opened before my mouth did. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, stepping aside to let her in. She dropped her bag and wrapped her arms around my waist. I smoothed her hair and held her longer than necessary, breathing in the lavender scent of her shampoo. Some bonds deserve preservation. Even when others must be released, they arrived just after sundown. I saw their car pull into the gravel drive, Ethan behind the wheel, Vanessa in sunglasses, though dusk had already swallowed the lake. They hadn't called, hadn't texted, just appeared like a memory I hadn't invited. I was already on the porch. Folding linens, Brittany had gone back that morning. The house felt quieter but not empty. Not lonely, just mine. Vanessa was the first to speak. "We've had a rough few weeks." Ethan nodded quickly. "Some rumors are circulating." "The wedding stuff. It's affecting my projects. Clients are nervous. And the house," Vanessa added. "Some of the bills bounced. We're behind. Just temporarily." They stood there in their designer coats, speaking as if I were a loan officer, not their mother. "We just need a few weeks," Ethan said. The guest room. "Just until things settle." I didn't reply right away. Instead, I stepped inside and returned with a tray, 2 cups of Earl Grey still steaming. I poured gently, without a word, and handed them each a cup. Vanessa held hers with both hands. Ethan stared at his, as if waiting for an answer to appear in the tea leaves. I sat for a moment, then rose again. "You built a wedding without me," I said quietly. "But I built your foundation," Ethan flinched. Vanessa looked away. "This home," I continued, "only welcomes those who remember that." I reached beside my chair and pulled out a manila envelope. It was thick, stamped, notarized. I handed it to Ethan. He didn't open it right away, just stared at the bold lettering on the front. Notice of termination. 30 days to vacate. Vanessa's eyes widened. "You're evicting us?" "No," I said, meeting her gaze calmly. "The trust is the same one you forgot existed when you erased me." I collected the empty tray as Ethan finally opened the envelope with trembling fingers. They didn't speak again. They left the porch slowly, like people carrying something too fragile to admit they'd broken. It didn't take long. Within a week of receiving the notice, Ethan filed a formal challenge against the trust, claimed confusion, misunderstanding, claimed I hadn't meant for it to be so rigid, but Carol was ready. She replied with scanned deeds, signature logs, notarized amendments, time-stamped transfers. Everything had been filed in good faith and with full legal clarity. Her tone in the letters was crisp, neutral, but I knew her well enough to hear the steel behind it. "There's nothing they can undo, Beatrice," she told me on the phone. "You built it properly. They just didn't think you'd remember to protect yourself." I nodded. I had. A few days later, someone forwarded me a video Vanessa posted online. Her face framed with carefully lit tears, soft piano music swelling underneath. "I loved my mother-in-law," she said in a trembling voice. "But money changes people." I didn't click. I didn't need to see the performance. Instead, I spent the morning at my credit union, closing our shared expense account and signing off on a full separation of finances. I updated my estate executor, removed Ethan as my emergency contact, and quietly gave that spot to Carol. That evening, the phone rang. It was Brittany's teacher. "Miss Wellen, just wanted to share something with you," she said gently. "Brittany made a drawing in class today. She said it was your house." I smiled, already feeling the warmth in my chest. "She called it her safe place," the teacher added. "Said it's where she hears birds in the morning and sleeps better than anywhere else." When the envelope arrived a few days later, I opened it slowly. Crayon trees, a wobbly rocking chair, a stick figure with big curly hair and a smile labeled me and Grandma at the lake. I walked to my study and hung it above the desk. Not out of sentiment, but out of clarity. Some people saw love as debt. Others felt it as home. I knew which one I wanted to be. 1 year later, the mornings are slower, softer. I wake to the rustling of lake wind through the birch trees. Not the buzz of worry or the clamor of obligations I never agreed to carry. The house is still mine. Legally, emotionally, completely. I've repainted the guest room a warm amber. I bought a new kettle. I planted lavender near the mailbox. And when it blooms, the scent drifts straight through the kitchen window. I volunteer twice a week at the library, mostly shelving, sometimes reading aloud during children's hour. On Thursdays, I teach memoir writing at the community center, a small class of 7 women and 1 widower, all with stories heavy in their chests, finally finding the space to speak. On Sundays, I brunch with a group of women I met through Carol. We laugh more than we eat. We talk about books, not betrayals. We toast the little things, uninterrupted sleep, new lipstick shades, tomatoes ripening on time. Brittany visits every other weekend. She arrives with her backpack and her sketch pad, always with a story to tell. We bake cornbread, take long walks, collect pine cones and memories. At night, she sleeps in the amber room, whispering, "I love this place," before her breath evens out in the dark. This morning, a wedding invitation arrived in the mail. It's from Ethan's cousin, Corin, the one who always made room for me at family tables. The card is simple, but the note inside is handwritten. "It wouldn't be the same without you. Aunt B." I smile as I read it, but I won't be there. That week I'll be in Oregon, camera in hand, chasing waterfalls along trails I've never walked. I'll send a thoughtful gift, something useful, something kind. And when I come home, this house will be waiting. Quiet, yes, but never empty. It holds my breath, my steps, my laughter, my boundaries, my beginnings. They planned a future without me, so I created a life without them.